Hi, I'm Dustin, and in addition to being the writer and director of Evenfall, I also did most of the visual effects work on the series. So from beginning to end across all 7 chapters, there were about 280, 290 visual effects shots that we needed to create. This ranged anywhere from really obvious VFX work like laser blasts or rocket ships, to more subtle things like compositing, rotoscoping, blurring out logos, or getting rid of airplanes in the sky. So on a proper studio-backed film or TV show, you'd normally have an entire team of visual effects artists working on stuff like this. We didn't really have the budget or the resources to do that, so I ended up doing most of the work myself. The upside is that it didn't really cost us anything beyond having to purchase a few effects plugins or stock footage, and the only real downside is that I spent a lot of sleepless nights down here slowly dying away in front of my computer screens. Okay, so what I'd like to do is give a breakdown of 10 visual effects shots or scenes from Evenfall. We'll go in chronological order starting with chapter 1. I'm going to save how we did the space shuttle sequence for a separate video just because of how complicated that was. Now these aren't meant to be in-depth tutorials or anything. I'm just going to show you the basics of how we accomplished each shot. So here we go. Number 1. The opening rocket shot. This is the first visual indication that our story takes place in a sci-fi setting. Here is what the shot looked like right out of the camera. In visual effects lingo, this is called the plate. In order to get the rocket to look like it's coming from behind this building, I had to cut a hole in the shot by creating what's called a mask. With this mask, you can place anything you want behind the shot now. I then duplicated this mask layer and keyed out the brightest parts of the image to help mask out these additional spots behind the trees. I shot a separate plate of a partly cloudy sky since the original sky was kind of nondescript and featureless. Now for the shuttle part. I added a light flare for the rocket engines, along with a pre-rendered smoke trail that I purchased. Then, I animated the flare to move at the same speed as the tip of the smoke trail. Here's the final result. Number 2. Reg almost gets shot by an arrow. So, a lot of people have asked if we really fired an arrow right next to Morgan's head in this scene. And the answer is no. Here's how we actually did it. First, we filmed Morgan's take without the arrow in the wall. Then, without moving the camera, we had Morgan step out of the frame so we could fire the arrow next to where he was sitting. Then, in post-production, I spliced the 2 frames together by cutting masks around each of them, and then lined up the takes so the timing of the arrow hitting the wall matched his reaction to it. So this one is less of a VFX shot and more of just some camera and editing trickery. But now you know that no Morgans were harmed during the filming of this scene. Number 3. Bombing aftermath. So Claire is heading back to the well after a massive bombing raid, and I wanted to give a sense of scale and actually show that aftermath. So this is what the original shot looked like. Now although the sky looked really cool, I had to key it out in order to drop new layers behind the foreground objects. So here's the replacement sky first. Then I wanted to add more buildings in the background, so I dropped in some additional plates behind the foreground elements. Next I started masking and cutting out sections of the buildings to create realistic looking damage to them. I then added several layers of fire and smoke plumes since the damage was supposed to be fresh. Add a little bit of foreground haze to cover up my lousy compositing work, and things are basically good now. Number 4. Snowy cabin at night. For the Christmas scene in chapter 3, I wanted to show some exterior shots of Garrett's cabin at night. It wasn't practical for us to actually film this at night, so instead we relied on a process called day for night. This was accomplished by filming daytime plates of the cabin, and then I applied a color grade to make the entire shot darker and more bluish in tone, to make it look more like nighttime. Next, I cut masks around the cabin itself, along with each window pane so I could place a soft, glowing interior texture behind it. This helped motivate the candlelit ambience from the interior shots. I keyed out the cloudy daytime sky and dropped in a layer of twinkly stars, then animated a little satellite or a space station moving across the sky here. The last thing I added was a pre-rendered smoke plume and some rising embers coming out of the chimney. Number 5. Pritchard's computer monitors. Most of the old school CRT monitors we had on set didn't actually work, so that meant I had to do all of the work in post. I had to design different user interfaces, programs, and command scripts all from scratch. However, it wasn't enough just to lay those animations over these blank screens, because they looked super fake at first. So to make them look more realistic and blend in with the shots better, I played each computer animation on a working CRT monitor and I filmed it with my camera. Then I took that shot and composited it into the scene. This helped give the animations that natural CRT glow that just can't be replicated by plugins or effects really well. Here, when Pritchard pulls up the Evenfall personnel directory, every single person that pops up has a unique name, title, employee number, and a facility location. And each location that's shown on screen has GPS coordinates that match where they would actually exist on a map. This is unnecessary information, but I'm sharing it because I probably have OCD and I need some help. Number 6, dropping a truck from Ohio into the desert. Since it was logistically impossible to bring our beloved military truck across the country, we had to rotoscope it into several plate shots out west. The opening shot in Chapter 5 required several layer stacks. I had to match the angle of that shot with a shot of the truck driving over the camera in Ohio. Then I added some taillights, some exhaust smoke, and gave the shot a 3D tilt to make it feel more organic. The process was pretty much the same for other exterior shots. I'd have to merge a plate shot from the Nevada desert with another plate shot of the truck in Ohio. Luckily, shooting all of this at night made things a little easier for the compositing work. Number 7, the hologram screen. The hardest part about doing this effect sequence was just finding a way to light the scene properly. I wanted the holographic screen to produce its own light source, so we stuck a single airy sky panel at the front of the conference room set and put it on flicker mode. We shot plates of the room with the lights on and off so that I could transition between the two in post. I created the actual interface in After Effects, and then I added a magic bullet effect called Holo Matrix to give it the right look and feel. Then I added some glow and made it semi-transparent so it could blend into the footage better. Number 8, the control room. Having learned my lesson from the nightmare of having to add screens in post, I wanted to do the exact opposite for the control room scenes in Chapter 7. We got permission to film at Kent State's Air Traffic Control Simulation Lab, and with the help of their awesome staff, we were able to drop in our pre-animated designs right onto their custom display setups.
Okay, I have to admit, these look really cool. It takes a while to set these up, and is a bit of a hiccup when they repeat. Probably gonna hopefully see it in this video, but sometime, there you go, you saw one there.
I had to design 3 setups total, with each setup requiring a separate panel for the 12 screens that are in the room. It was a lot more work up front, but the coolest part about capturing these scenes completely in camera is that the screens themselves provided most of the lighting for our actors. Plus, the actors were able to react to the displays naturally, which I think helped their performances. Number 9, glitching landscapes. In Chapter 5, we learned that Evenfall is a giant underground dome with screens or projections that can change like the wallpaper on a computer desktop. So when Lockhart calls in the surface airstrike in Chapter 7, I wanted to have these fake landscapes start to glitch and malfunction from all the damage. My plate for this was a wide shot of Henderson, Nevada, which we captured during our Hoover Dam filming trip. I rolled a take right around sunset and captured the same angle once it got dark. Then I picked out a few stock images that matched the height and focal length of my plates, keyed out the sky, and dropped them in the background. To give the transitions a glitchy electronic look, I used something called a glitch effect, which is included in Magic Bullet's plugin library. Add some cool sound effects, and this is the result.
Today's theme is trance.
Number 10, the shootout. For the climactic action scene in Chapter 7, we had two groups of people firing two different types of weapons on each other. None of the prop weapons that we had on set actually fired anything though, so everything had to be created in post. This wasn't as technically challenging as some of the other shots that I had to work on, but it was very tedious because every single blast, muzzle flash, and impact had to be individually animated. The other tricky part was trying to time the animations up with when the actors would pull the triggers or even do a little bit of recoil with their weapons. You can see here that Sarah even does like a little flinch in this shot, which meant that I had to add an impact hit to motivate that flinch for her. Every bullet hole that shows up on the truck had to stay consistent with later shots too. This whole sequence was a monster to put together, and I have newfound respect for whoever adds all the laser blasts in Star Wars gunfights. So that's it for our VFX breakdown. Once again, check out the separate video we did on the final space shuttle sequence, as that one goes into a lot more detail than we covered with these VFX shots.